I think sometimes you can start at the beginning and work your way to the close one opportunity, and it doesn't always result in the best data, the best strategy. So for us, we've been looking at the difference between win rate and close rate and trying to use those metrics in the right facet to get the insights needed. And then backing out into, we're trying to get better about forecasting in Salesforce.
This is RevOps Demystified, the number one most downloaded podcast in revenue operations. We invite the brightest minds in RevOps onto the show to deconstruct the what, why, and how behind rep productivity, forecasting, metrics, and all things revenue. This podcast is brought to you by Ebster, a revenue intelligence platform used to identify risk in the pipeline and score customer engagement. Hello and welcome to another very special episode of the RevOps Demystified Podcast. Today we're joined by Hannah Duncan, the Director of Operations at Postscript. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
So first off, and the topic that I'd actually really love to dive into is your I don't want to say graduation, but your potential progression from RevOps into like general operations. We'll talk about that in a second. But before, I'd like to understand how you first got into the sales/RevOps world.
Yeah, of course. I got into a business development role. It was at a tech startup, and it was my first exposure to Salesforce. And I was only in a BDR role for about 3 months. I was much better at the reporting and strategic side of trying to hit my number. So I started very early creating my own dashboards. I was so much more interested in the Salesforce side. So it quickly progressed, obviously, into, for a short period of time, a hybrid role where I was doing part business development and part sales operations. Then I was doing full-time sales operations. And that quickly transitioned into revenue operations as our department was making that transition at the time. And I've been in revenue operations ever since, and just recently making more of the transition to more of a general operations focus.
So that was at ShipBob, right?
Yes, that was at ShipBob.
Cool. And so you were doing this like strategic stuff for yourself. And then I assume like your manager or like the head of sales was like, Hannah's crushing this. We should get Hannah to do this for more of our reps or BDRs.
I was exceeding all of my ramp quotas. But I wasn't doing it the traditional way. Like I wasn't cold calling a lot. I was sending very few emails. I was just being efficient about which companies I was reaching out to because I was pulling these reports and kind of figured out how to be strategic. And of course, you want to duplicate that across a larger BDR team. So, what was working for me, some of the reports and dashboards ended up being used across the full BDR team. And that was when I moved into sales operations, my main focus starting out was kind of like sales development operations because I had that background. And then it slowly, as I grew in the role and started to get more experience, started to branch out to how can I help the account executive team and implementation and customer success. It just slowly bled out into being across the go-to-market team.
Got it. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. You mentioned about how you were being strategic in that first role as a BDR. Can you share something from Postscript where you've been strategic that's led to like a better outcome for the A's or the SDRs of that business?
Yeah, I think what I try to do is think about, I've never been in an AE role, but I try to think about if I was an AE, how would I manage my pipeline? And so I recently have built out some more dashboards that surface low-hanging fruit. And for us, that is, we have two different business models. We have a usage business model. So our AEs actually work with customers, trying to ramp them up to a certain spend milestone. And then we also have a traditional sales pipeline where we're trying to get them on contracts. And so surfacing things like customers who have high utilization in the platform and different metrics they might not be as tuned in on, but surfacing those to the team. And that's been very helpful already to the account executives.
Got it. And so this is on the kind of the usage metric. You've been showing data to the AEs that enables them to like be more effective with their time and therefore get better results.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
We have so much data available. It's just about knowing what the right metric is that's going to help them.
For sure. And so to zoom in today at Postscript, roughly how many people are in the revenue generating function? So sales reps, CS reps, and then roughly how many people are there in the ops team?
Yeah. Our business development team is around 25 with reps and managers, account executives. I believe we have like 15 AEs and then sales leadership. And the CS org is pretty large. We have about 40 in that entire department, but that's across customer success, onboarding, and support.
Got it. And so now your role as director of operations, the revenue generating function rolls up to you, right? So do we have like a RevOps lead that's reporting to you?
Not yet. The transition just happened 2 weeks ago. So the main updates have been legal operations is now a new function that's kind of underneath the operations umbrella, and also recruiting operations. So I'm leading our recruiting operations team too.
Got it. So you're serving these two other functions, legal and HR, or part of HR with recruiting.
Yeah.
Awesome. And this is like slightly outside the remit of the show, but I would be really interested to understand like what something that you learned from sales or RevOps that you've applied to those two new fields that has like had an impact.
I think it all comes back to just like stakeholder alignment and just understanding process. I think Salesforce took me really far in my career because I could, do the put together a flow and create the dashboards and reporting. But I think what transitions more broadly just to general like business operations is you understand who you need to get aligned, because it's usually a cross-functional initiative, and what's the process you're going to put in place. And so I think that's been what I'm trying to focus on with bridging the gap between HR, like our recruiting function, and the rest of the go-to-market team. And on the legal side, that's all just brand new. We're really just for the first time having that function.
Awesome. So coming back to the FDRs/BDRs, these are your roots. What have you, at Postscript again, have you implemented anything for these people that has had a big impact on how many meetings they've been able to book?
I think a lot of it is just in building so far. We started the year with 2 BDRs and now we're at 25. So many of them are very new in their ramp. We've just been making sure that they have the tools in place to be successful. So they have their sales engagement platform, the contact enriching platform. Our team's been very helpful in like setting up territories and segmenting their books so they understand which accounts to prioritize. So a lot of it's been the foundation, and then hoping that now that we have more of a foundation built up and we have more reps on board, we'll be focusing more on optimizing.
What have you learned through onboarding? Because clearly going from 2 to 25 must have been somewhat of a roller coaster.
I think I've learned at scale, you can't onboard everyone yourself. So at first I was, a new BDR started, I would hop on a call with them, show them Salesforce. We were very small. And as our enablement function has also grown, that's been helpful, but just documenting more evergreen content that can be used in a one-to-many way. So we use Guru quite a bit. So anytime there's like a question that pops up, if it's popped up a couple of times, we try to document that in a Guru card. We also now have a full LMS. So we built out an operations enablement course to help each team understand the rules of engagement, how to use Salesforce. So that's been very helpful because there was kind of this gap between having to do everything in person and then having a ton of questions because the documentation wasn't there. And we're finally to the point where we have what I feel like is pretty strong documentation on the onboarding process.
Awesome. Well, Alex, we're going to bring you in now to dig a little bit deeper.
Thanks very much, Tom. And thank you, Hannah, for all the insights so far and helping us follow along with a really fascinating journey that you've not just been on in your career, but obviously the last year as well. Some pretty impressive scale that I'm sure people would like to do. It's that 12.5x on the biz dev side, at least. I don't know if that's everywhere, but certainly explosive growth. There were a few things that really stood out to me, but let's work backwards. It'll be easier, it's fresher in the mind. So you talked about creating more evergreen content, and I just felt that was such a helpful way of thinking about things and putting it. The number of times we were doing the same sort of thing again and again, and that's should be the clear indicator, right? Create something that does this once and for all, and move on. How have you approached kind of those evergreen resources and how you go about creating them?
Mm-hmm. I think it starts with thinking about what areas in your process are most likely not going to change. So focusing on giving a really good overview into them. And then if there are areas, like with how quickly our company has grown, things change a lot. Having that be in a Guru card or a resource that is verified frequently. So we verify content around every 3 months, which still it sometimes becomes stale that way. But I think focusing on being as detailed but as vague as you can, if that makes sense. So detailed in the overall process, vague on things that may change, or setting that up to be in a content that would be able to be verified.
Great. Thank you very much. Really helpful. And you used a phrase before I cut out, which was really interesting, about knowing when to be specific and knowing when to be vague. And I really love that as a concept. Do you want to just reiterate on that a bit further?
Yeah, of course. I think there are times where when you're diving into a process and need to go very in detail, such as how to create an opportunity in Salesforce, you need to walk through every step by step. I think that's a time where you need to be very specific. I think two ways. When you're trying to roll out a new process to a stakeholder or a larger team, I think it's important not to over dive into the technical details. So when you're trying to give an overview of process as a whole, being very high level is helpful and not getting too into the weeds, and then knowing when you need to be more technical and be more specific.
Great. I think I thought it was good as well. Just the idea about not being too detailed sometimes so that it will go stale quicker. So finding something that fits, as well as you're right, mapping it to when, how specific it needs to be to understand it. The other key thing I thought was a really interesting point that you mentioned before, which is something I'm sure most of our listeners will be struggling with, is knowing the right metric. As you said, there's so much data now. It's not about understanding your data; it's about knowing which bits to access and how. So, do you want to talk a bit more about how you figure out what the right metric is for something, and how you build your reports, or you strategize on your data collection to be able to make sure you can report in the way you want to?
Yeah, of course. I think it ultimately starts with some sort of guiding light of understanding what is that key outcome we're looking for. So in a sales cycle, that's a close one opportunity, right? And then I always back into what are the indicators we can identify that are going to help us get there. I think sometimes you can start at the beginning and work your way to the close one opportunity, and it doesn't always result in the best data or the best strategy. So for us, we've been looking at the difference between win rate and close rate and trying to use those metrics in the right facet to get the insights needed. And then backing out into, we're trying to get better about forecasting in Salesforce. So inputting those data points correctly. We're still very much so in the building the foundation phase, but trying to build it correct so we're able to get these insights as we scale.
Great, thank you. And any kind of times that you found something particularly helpful, like a specific example, maybe where you've really found a certain metric has helped a particular problem really well?
I'm thinking.
That's fine. Don't worry.
Yeah. I think just to kind of go back to close rates and win rates, we've been structuring all of our opportunities to understand the channel and department they came from. And that's been super helpful as we do biweekly pipeline reviews to understand which channels are performing well. So inbound versus outbound, and what departments are leading to the highest win rates and close rates. So I think more so, it's usually these are simple metrics, but it's more so slicing and dicing them the right way in order to actually get real insight. If it's too vague, if your win rate across the board is X, it's not really going to help pinpoint what needs to change.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's really helpful, isn't it? It's not so much what you're looking at, because sometimes what you're looking at is obvious, as you said. It's either a win rate or it's a revenue, or it's something very basic. It's about the right cohort, so that you're asking I always think about reporting in terms of questions and answers. I want to ask a good specific question and then be able to answer it accurately. And then you've got a helpful narrative potentially, or a concerning narrative, or whatever it might be, but you've actually delivered some value. It's turning numbers into a story essentially, and a coherent
I think
one.
I think that's the key, is like sometimes you can get so deep into a spreadsheet or to analyzing data that you forget what the question you're trying to answer is. So I always try to have that guiding light at the very beginning, so I don't get too deep down a rabbit hole of something else,
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it's a big piece in recruitment as well, in that it's easy to look for people who are very numbers orientated and good with numbers and organized. And while that's great, actually, the creative part is almost more important, and it's harder to train. I think it's much more innate. You can upskill in it, but you kind of almost have it or you don't. And really, it's being able to understand that it's not just a number on a page. It's telling you something about and understanding the context, or knowing where you need to go to understand it, to really deliver insight that you can use to help scale the business.
Exactly.
Amazing. It's been really interesting. So thank you very much. So the last question from me is just essentially throwing the floor open to you. My goodness, I need to pick some easier words to say in sequence, but basically asking for anything that's been particularly on your mind recently that you've really been sort of learning about operations, or maybe something you've really been thinking of, maybe something you're considering a new way of working, or something that's used to be a best practice you're not so sure that it's good anymore. One of our guests referred to them as hot takes around, anything like that, anything basically completely not driven by us that you think would be really cool to share with the audience.
Yeah, I think something that I'm working on more closely now that I haven't before is understanding capacity planning and workforce planning for next year. I've always been more involved in what are our comp plans going to be for next year, or helping out with some sales strategy. And so that's been something where it's new and I'm still learning. But I think having the core fundamentals of understanding the business has been very helpful there. And also just understanding spreadsheets and the ability to manipulate data that way. But that's been a new project that I've been working on, and has been kind of eye-opening to me.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Tom, do you want to come back in and wrap us up?
Yep, here we go. Hannah, the most important question of the whole episode. Who in the world of sales ops would you most like to take for lunch?
Okay, so this is kind of a stretch, but I have been following Jeremy Donovan at SalesLoft for years. And I know he's like sales strategy, but I'm so interested in that realm. And I feel like it's adjacent to sales operations. So that's going to be who I would love to pick his brain and just learn more from.
He's also a ex-guest on the show. So
really, I'll have to listen to his episode.
Yeah, really good episode. He's and he has his own podcast as well, I believe. But Hannah, thank you so much. It's been super interesting to learn about your kind of journey so far into the world of RevOps, and now, of course, surpassing the world of RevOps. And I'm sure the work that you're going to be doing with the HR team and the legal team is going to bring the magic of RevOps to those two functions as well. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Tom. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for listening to this episode of RevOps Demystified. If you're listening on a podcast listening application, please follow, rate, and review the show. And if you have any questions about the show, can recommend a guest, or just want to learn more about RevOps or Ebster, hit us up at podcast@ebster.com.